In the vast ocean, where there is only wind, waves and an endless horizon, European trawlers move silently, growling through each cold wave. On these boats, the lives of dozens of men are unlike any other profession on land. They are warriors of the sea, facing harsh weather, hard work and isolation in the vast ocean. Only to exchange hundreds of tons of fish, the spoils of a fierce journey. Each trip usually lasts from a few days to many weeks. The ships leave port in the early morning, carrying fuel, food, fresh water and hope. As the rudder slowly turns, behind them are small roofs, families, the smiles of wives and children. Ahead, there is only the sea and the challenge. The winter sea of the North Atlantic is not gentle, it rages with strong winds, waves as high as 3-story houses and cold rain that tears at the skin. But European fishermen are used to it. They were born in the sea and they live with the sea. On board, all activities revolve around hunting for large fish. The captain, usually a man with decades of experience, sits in front of a radar screen. A sonar fish finder and a modern GPS system to search for moving schools of fish. Each type of fish has its own signs, moves in its own current and at its own time. Sometimes it takes hundreds of nautical miles to discover a large school of mackerel, herring or cod. At that time, all the sailors wake up, even in the middle of the night, ready for a long haul. The haul nets on modern ships are often hundreds of meters long, sometimes longer than the length of a football field, and weigh tons. Two giant funnel-shaped nets are lowered to the seabed, then pulled taut by the force of a slow-moving ship. Each haul lasts from 4 to 8 hours, depending on the depth, terrain and target. When the net was pulled up, everyone stood on deck. The roar of the engines, the screeching of the metal cables, and the fishy smell of the sea made everyone tense. When the net rose to the surface, it swelled like a giant bag full of fish. Its silvery shine sparkling under the halogen lights. It was a moment no one could forget. The fish crowded together in the net, thrashing around, water splashing everywhere. Sometimes hundreds of tons of fish were dumped onto the deck, flooding like a flood. At that moment, the sailors' work really began. They stood in rows, sorting the fish on the spot. Herring, cod, mackerel, flounder, each type was put on a separate conveyor belt leading straight to the freezer. The sub-zero temperature froze the fish instantly, keeping it fresh for export back to the mainland. Each person had a job. No one could rest. A group of people raked the deck, pushing water and fish blood down the drain. Another group continuously scoops fish, putting them into sorting machines. The rest work in the cold storage, packing fish into trays, loading them into containers or operating industrial freezing systems. The sound of the machines is endless. The smell of engine oil mixes with the smell of fish, and the lights illuminate the deck all night. A big catch can take until the next morning to be processed. Everyone is exhausted, but their eyes still shine with joy. Each ton of fish is more money, more rewards, another worthwhile trip. Life on board is not always as exciting as when pulling in the nets. On calm days, when the fish haven't been found, everyone lives in a cramped space below deck. The bedrooms are small bunk beds, damp blankets, cold metal walls. Meals are simple: spaghetti, canned fish, cold meat, but it is the only time everyone can chat, laugh, and tell stories about their homeland. Some people are away from home for months, leaving behind small children and pregnant wives. But they still go to sea. Because the sea is their livelihood. The only place where they can earn a decent income in an increasingly difficult economy. Many young sailors initially dream of sea voyages as an adventure. But after just a few weeks at sea, they realize it is hard, dangerous and lonely work. Accidents happen unexpectedly, nets get tangled in feet, falls on slippery decks, being swept away while standing near the edge of the ship. Some never return. But the sea still calls them back, again and again. Some modern ships today are equipped with gyms, movie rooms, and satellite internet to help sailors relieve stress. But most are still old, upgraded powerboats with basic living spaces. Each sailor has to get used to interrupted sleep, constant physical work and the feeling of loneliness when in the middle of a dark night at sea with only the sound of waves. And then, when the last catch was brought down to the hold, when the ship turned its bow toward the mainland, they eagerly thought of the day of return, when the ship docks. A loading team is waiting. They unload the fish by conveyor belt or industrial crane, load them into refrigerated containers, and transport them to processing plants or export them directly. The white cod blocks, the silvery herring bodies, all are carefully weighed and measured, each kilogram determining the income of the whole trip, with a yield of several hundred tons. Each trip can bring in hundreds of thousands of euros for the ship owner, and the fishermen are divided according to the ratio. Some people receive a few thousand euros after a month of hard work, while others, due to expenses being deducted or accidents, only take home a small amount of money. Returning to land is not always a rest. For some sailors who rent a house near the port, they go home just to have a hot meal with their family, then immediately board another ship. Those who do not have a family rent a room, go to a bar to drink beer, or just lie down and sleep because they are tired. There are people who have been at sea for 10 or 15 years, but every time they board a ship, it still feels like the first time, nervous, anxious, and a bit of a challenge. Because out there is the ocean, a place that does not promise safety. In countries like Norway, Iceland, Spain, or the Netherlands, the trawl fishing industry still holds an important position in the economy. The government invests in high-tech fleets, equipped with satellite positioning systems, AI fish school tracking systems, and surveillance cameras to ensure that fishing does not exceed the prescribed limit. However, the pressure on fishermen is increasing. Fish are not as abundant as before. Large fish stocks are becoming increasingly rare, requiring ships to go farther, fish deeper, and cost more. But fishermen still do not give up. They accept the trade-off, because there is no other job they do better on beautiful days. When the ships cast their nets in the middle of the ocean, sailors take the opportunity to dry clothes, sit and smoke, and tell each other stories. Some were soldiers. Some had gone to college but dropped out. Some got divorced. Some went to sea to escape debt. Each person had a different reason. But they still met on the same ship. The camaraderie at sea is very special. In the moment of stretching the net, one person slipped. The other immediately pulled him back. When the waves crashed hard, everyone quickly grabbed the railing, but still turned their heads to see if their teammates were okay. At sea, there is no carelessness. Because just a moment of carelessness can cost you your life. There are nights when the sea is calm. The sky is bright with moonlight. The ship stands still in the middle of the deep ocean. Everyone lies on the deck, looking up at the stars. At that time, the sea is no longer fierce, but becomes tolerant. As if embracing the small people who dare to challenge it. Some people hum a few old songs. Some people take out their phones to look at pictures of their wives and children. Some people just quietly close their eyes. Breathe deeply. To feel that they are still alive. Then, as the sky began to lighten, the fog gradually cleared. The radar system sent out a signal. A large school of fish was moving near the fishing net area. Everyone immediately got into position. The net puller whirred. The net was lowered dozens of meters to the bottom. The captain watched the sonar screen, adjusted the ship's speed, and a few hours later, the net was pulled up. Full of cod as big as an adult's arm. The whole deck erupted, shouting. The sound of the engine running. The sound of fish slapping their bodies, all like a bustling symphony of the seafaring profession. At that time, they didn't think about fatigue. Sweat mixed with seawater. Their calloused hands continued to work, like a habit ingrained in their blood. Some people laughed out loud. Some shouted with joy. Some just silently watched the school of fish, because they understood that this was the result of the trade-off. From fitful sleep. From cold meals. And from tears of homesickness. That is the life of European fishermen on modern trawlers, a separate world. Not flashy. Not noisy. But full of emotions and vitality. A place where each catch is not only a product of the sea, but also a testament to resilience, perseverance and the spirit of not giving up in the midst of the vast waves. There are bustling fishing ports in Portugal, Spain or France, where every morning, refrigerated trucks line up to bring fish to market. Trays of fish are displayed under the yellow light. Buyers and sellers bargain, bid, record, and weigh each crate. But fishermen rarely witness such scenes. When the ship docks, their task is to check the ship, clean the deck, prepare fuel, and repair parts worn out during the journey. Some even take a few hours of sleep on the ship and then return to work. Because the time on land is too short compared to the intensity of the long work at sea. Not all fishermen stick with the profession for life. Some leave the sea after a few years. Because they cannot stand the pressure. Because of accidents. Or simply because they are no longer young. But those who stay, all become different people. They learn to be patient, to endure, to rely on each other in life and death situations. On the ship, no one is more important than anyone else. The net puller is as hardworking as the freezer. The machine operator is as busy as the radar operator. Everyone is an indispensable link in that chain during the big fishing season. The ship can carry up to 300 to 500 tons of fish after a 3-week trip. The cold storages are packed. The cold air spreads to the deck. That is when the ship becomes heavy, moves slow but carries satisfaction in everyone's eyes. No one says it, but everyone knows, those tons of fish are blood and sweat, homesickness and silent sacrifice. Sometimes the fishermen have to cast their nets continuously for 3 nights because the fish are following the big current. They cannot miss it. Their eyes are dark. Their hands are numb. But they still smile. They continue. In the middle of the ocean, they encounter all kinds of surprises. Once, when they pulled up the net, they saw a shark caught in it, weighing several hundred kilos. Causing the net to almost break. There were times when they pulled up plastic waste, styrofoam boxes, old nets, bottles, juice, which left everyone speechless. Sometimes, the nets got caught on reefs, torn apart, and took a whole day to mend. And there were times when they pulled up dozens of tons of fat herring and fresh mackerel, flooding the deck with excited cheers. Every day at sea was a mystery. No one knew what would happen today. And that made their lives never boring. That life was not suitable for the faint-hearted. At sea, there were no hospitals, no police, no one to rescue if the ship broke down in the middle of the ocean. They repaired the engine, gave first aid, and took care of each other. If someone was injured, they had to try to bandage it, contact by radio, and then wait a few days for a rescue ship to arrive. There were fishermen who broke their arms and lost blood, but still had to endure until the ship reached shore. That is why there is always a large medicine cabinet on board. And the first mate must learn first aid skills before going to sea. On board, people do not talk much about sadness, but each person has a private corner, where they sit and look at the sea when they are tired, when they miss home, when they feel lonely. They do not express their emotions, but their eyes tell more stories than any words. Some people go to sea for the first time as young men in their 20s, with a scholarly face. But after only a few months, their faces are sunburned, their eyes are sharp, their hands are calloused. They are no longer the same as before. The sea changes them, not only their appearance, but also their personality. Each ship is a small family, where people live, eat, work, sleep and share everything with each other. Friendship at sea is not the same as on land. It is a feeling born from near-death experiences, from moments of despair, from tight handshakes after a big catch. There were people who saved their friends from falling into the sea. There were people who shared the last loaf of bread when the ship was lost in the storm. They didn't need to say thank you. Just a look, a pat on the shoulder, was enough to understand each other for life. At night, when everyone was tired, The lights from the deck shone down on the sparkling sea. The only sounds left were the waves and the steady hum of the generator. On the small table in the dining room, a few people still sat, drinking cold coffee, smoking their last cigarette of the day. A few photos were stuck on the wall, photos of their children, their wives, their families, as if to remind them that, no matter how big the sea was, they always had a reason to return. After many long sea voyages, after sleepless nights and nets full of fish, the lives of European fishermen continued to revolve like that, starting with dawn at sea and ending with sunset on land. They didn't dream much, nor did they ask for anything fancy. All they needed was a safe return, a sturdy ship, a united crew. And a rewarding voyage in the cold northern seas or the Atlantic Ocean. Modern trawlers continue their journeys. Fishermen, who have been in the profession from generation to generation, still face harsh nature, climate change, declining fish stocks, pressure from policies, rising fuel prices, and ever-changing technology. But despite everything, they still go to sea. Because that is the only place they belong. Perhaps, the life of a seafarer is not for the majority. It is full of hardship, loneliness and danger. But it is in this seemingly harsh landscape that we find the purest beauty of courage, sacrifice and perseverance. Those men are not heroes in history books, nor are they praised in the press every day. But they are the ones who keep an entire industry alive, an indispensable link in the global food supply chain. They live in the sea, and they can also die in the sea. But they love the sea as if it were a part of their flesh and blood, because the sea teaches them how to survive, how to endure, and how to cherish the smallest things, a hot meal, a message from a loved one, a peaceful sleep in the heart of the mainland. And so, when the sun has just risen above the horizon, they set sail, leave the port, and head forward, where the waves are waiting, where new nets await, and where the life of a fisherman continues to be written in the vast ocean.